Check out this tree. The first snowfall we got about 3 inches, but the problem with this little tree, this is a red oak tree, is it's got a big tree right above it. What happens is the snow gets too heavy for that tree and then it falls on this tree. This is pretty unique because it is fully folded over. I hope it's not cracked or bent out of repair, but I think it can be. This is what happens when the leaves on the trees don't come off before our first snow. You can see that tree right there is leaning over pretty good. That's a birch tree. They're pretty flexible. So what's unique is the one sitting right next to it is totally fine. It's pretty out here right now. You excited? This is a good example of what you want to see if you're tracking deer. So not a perfect example, but you can see where this deer is walking this way. Dragged his toes right here. You can see it over there too. You know, obviously there's a kind of a lump right here, so it's not perfect, but it's a decent deer anyway. You can see where they're coming right here. Looks like a group of 3 or 4. And they go right between those 2 trees there. Probably happened a day ago. These are rabbit tracks. You can, so it's always 2 in the front and then 2 in the back. A squirrel track, we'll have 2 in the front and then 2 in the back, kind of side by side, not directly back and forth. You can see where that rabbit's going through, and you can also see the habitat is perfect for a rabbit here. They like the greens and they like being able to hide, so not that abnormal. Lots of tracks, lots of wildlife. This is a way better example of a rabbit track. Alright, so these right here, got a bunch of rabbit tracks here. But you've also got this weird trail of tracks, and I have always thought that that's a mouse. Sometimes they're a partridge too. Obviously neither are what I'm after, so it doesn't matter, but it's kind of a cool thing to see when you're in the woods. Let me know what you think those are. Alright, let's talk about something real quick. Been walking now, I'm only about a quarter mile into my walk, but the way you hold your rifle is pretty important when you're walking. So they teach you during your hunter safety course. Let's talk about a couple different types of carry. So I was just coming through here, you can see where I am. It's pretty good deer territory. I don't want to be walking with my rifle like this, right? I've seen people carry their gun like that where the barrel is pointed backward. It's safe if you're walking alone, and if you want to do that, that's fine. But if you're in an area where you think there's a reasonable chance you're going to see a deer, I always like to have my left hand right midway in the rifle, and then my trigger hand, which would be for me my right hand. Some people are left-handed, so it'll be your left hand, but I always like to have it just like this. And it's hard to carry your rifle like this for any amount of time, so this is only a carry I'll do for maybe a minute or two. especially with this is an 8-pound rifle with bullets and scope on it, so it's not the latest thing in the world. But this way I can get the gun up pretty quick. Another way I'll carry if I'm walking and I don't think I'm gonna, see a deer, but it'd be quick for me to be able to shoulder. I'll carry it just like this. In fact, in most of my videos, that's how you'll see me carry. Because if I carry like this, the transition from here to here is pretty seamless for me, and those are all things that you should practice. So mostly I'll carry like this. If this arm gets tired, I'll carry like this. If I'm on a hot track, this pump is kind of a unique rifle, so not everyone's going to be able to benefit from this. Pine cone's falling on me. But there's a slot right here. I don't know if you can see it. It's right there, or my thumb can kind of go right there, and the rifle's perfectly balanced. And I'll always tip it a little bit more toward the ground just to be safe. There's nobody around me now, and I'll walk like that. Or with this hand, because it's ambidextrous, there's a spot here for this thumb. And it's real quick for me to put the rifle up if I need to. Chances are if you see a deer and you're walking and he's seeing you, you're already screwed. But if by chance you see a deer and he doesn't see you, you got to think about how quickly it would be for you to do one of these without him seeing your motion. And that's not the easiest thing in the world to do. Deer don't have a good set of eyes. They have good ears and they have a good nose. You can see the wind swirling here, and it doesn't really matter today from a smell perspective, but you always want to be thinking about how can I have an advantage all the time, because you never know when you're going to see that deer that you're going to shoot, especially here in the Adirondacks. The deer are sparse, and it's been known the people that hunt deer, whitetail deer specifically, that have hunted them all around the world, and then they hunt them in the Adirondacks, they have all said the same thing. The Adirondack deer is the most wily, high-sensed animal that they've hunted in the deer family, and I firmly believe that that's probably true. But so do everything you can to improve your odds, and just carrying the rifle is an important aspect to that. See where this deer started. Oh, this thing's funny. You can see where this deer started over there. He was eating and he walked. Let's take a look at what he did. This is not a scrape, because there's no licking branch tree above him. So this doesn't excite me. This over here is a little different. Let's take a look. Even if this was a scrape, this is not a big one. And I'm around so many spots like this. There's two more right there. There's a few back there. This is just where a deer spawned to try to get some food. So this is a really, really fresh scrape, because this snow's only been here for maybe 48 hours. This isn't a huge deer. Based on this, anyway, I wouldn't say he is. But you can see right here, he was putting his scent and he broke that branch off. So the scrape doesn't really excite me, but at least you know that the track you're on is a buck anyway. You can definitively say that for sure. There's rumors that does leave scrapes, but I've never seen that happen, and I don't know why. So, what is a scrape? If you're not a whitetail deer hunter, or if you're new, I can smell him. I don't think he's too far away. I'm probably standing here looking at me. I've already shot a deer this year, so he's gonna have to be a decent buck for me to shoot a second one. But what he's doing here is he's marking his territory, so he paws away all the leaves and snow in this case. You can see where he kicked it up, and he pees in it to let all the other bucks know that he's here and that this is his territory. And then he takes his head and he rubs his head all over this tree branch, and if you were to take that tree branch, it would smell just like him. And the point of the scrape is that if a doe comes in, a female whitetail deer comes in, and she wants to breed, she's in heat. Their rumor is that the doe is only in heat for about 24 to 48 hours, and she goes through that cycle 2 or 3 times between September and January. So when you see this November 18th today, when you see a scrape, you know, again, this isn't a monster. A dominant buck will have a really large scrape, but this is a good sign. It tells you that there's a buck in the area, which in the Adirondacks is not always a given, and so it's a good sign. That's what you want to look for. So what does this tell you? Obviously we have snow here, but if we didn't, you could come to the conclusion, the same conclusion that the snow tells us, right? He came in, I can smell him, he's not very far from me. He came in from this direction, and he pawed that way, and so, you know, you could make the argument that maybe the deer will do a circle around and then paw and then maybe kick it this way and then maybe walk this way, but you know, obviously the tracks are here, so it's pretty easy to tell, but you could tell that the deer walked this way, decided to put a scrape here, scraped that way, and then he continued to walk that way. If there wasn't snow, you could make a pretty good assumption that that's what happened. If the dirt was over this way, you'd make the assumption that he came in from this side, scraped, kicked the dirt that way, and then he went that way. You could see he's got a track in there, so you could see how big he is. He's not a very big buck, I would say. He's less than 2 years old, I'm sure. But you'd want to, especially with the snow, you'd want to look around and see if he put his head in the ground, maybe sniffing the ground. And if he did that, you'd see horn prints if he had big horns. And either he doesn't have big horns, which I think is the case in this instance, or he didn't put his head down, which would be kind of a rare thing. So this is a good example. I'm not going to see too many more, probably just because it's going to be snow falling all the time. But this time of year, this buck will be back about every 24 hours to check it, unless he gets on a hot doe, and then he'll follow her until she's ready to breed. He'll breed her, and then he'll either come back here or keep wandering until he finds a hot doe. That's their point right now, is trying to find a hot doe. But it's not uncommon to see a mature buck have 2 or 3 does with him right now, because he'll wait for all of them to get hot, and then he'll breed all of them and then move on. So you know, you can make some, again, we have snow, so it's not like you know, this is not a hard puzzle to solve. But if you didn't have snow, you could see how far he kicks the dirt and the leaves, and you can make, it's all a big puzzle, right? So you just, you know, you're going to be wrong on some of your items that you see, but you can make the assumption that it's a powerful animal if he's really throwing that dirt. This one's, he's nothing huge, but that's a good sign. It was right about 11:30, 11:45 on a Friday. No shooting this morning. I gotta make a decision if I want to go after this deer or not. I don't think he's very far away. We'll see. Check out how that tree broke in half. That's a pretty neat landmark. So this is a deer bed. This is different than a scrape or a rub, so this is where a deer is staying when he goes to sleep, so this isn't a very big deer, and I haven't fully looked around, but if there's no other bed here, there's a good chance that this is a buck. It'd be kind of strange if it was a lone doe. Like I said, I don't think it's a big deer, but this is where he stayed probably last night. Maybe this morning. Yeah, probably not this morning. That's a good sign. here. He's got one right there. He's got one right there. And then he's got one right there. Pretty active buck. Looks like either a bobcat track or a coyote track. I think it's a coyote.